Welcome back. My name is Caitlin and I'm in the middle of a low buy year. If you're returning to my channel, you know that is different than what I've been saying because I was previously in a no buy year. I made a video explaining sort of what happened. Basically, I broke my no buy year. Going forward, I'm going to return to the rules that I had set in place and not purchase anything unless it's a replenishment of something. But just because I did break my no buy, going forward I am going to be calling this my low buy year. Today I'm going to be ranking my Natasha Denona Midi palettes. I previously ranked all of the full-size palettes of hers that I have, which I think actually is all of them. I will put the video somewhere and I'll link it in the description if you want to check that out. Of the Midi palettes, I have all of them except for the Retro Glam and the newest one, the Yucca, but I did put together my own version of the Yucca palette and made a video about it. I will also link that somewhere if you want to check that out. Because of that, some of the palettes that I'll be showing you have been like kind of rearranged so they're not fully what they would look like, but I mean, if you know Natasha Denona, I'm sure you are aware of what the palettes look like, and if I need to, I will place like images of what it should look like if mine of that is different. I am also just really quickly going to talk about, I have 3 of her 5-pan palettes. 2 of them are like the full-size pan ones, and then I have the mini gold. So I have the palette 08. Unfortunately, 2 of the shades arrived broken, and when I had purchased it, it was on sale at Sephora, and then after it had arrived to me, it was already out of stock, so I couldn't like replace it. But I just kept it. I tried to press them back in as best I could, but I mean, it's still quite flaky and crumbly. And then I also have the palette 10. This is like really, really old, but whenever I swatch it, it still swatches fine, and I quite enjoy this color right here in particular, so I hang on to it because of that. Actually, now I'm wondering if I can remove these. I also think because this is so old and the packaging is like the first iteration of this, the pans don't actually come out of the packaging. I could probably apply heat and melt the glue or whatever and pop them out, but I don't want to do that, so I just hold on to it as is. So of these 3, I think the mini gold is my favorite. This one would be my second favorite, the 08, and then the last would be the 10, basically because I only ever use those 2 metallic shades, but I just hang on to it. So those were the smaller 5 pans. I don't have any other of the smaller palettes like that of hers, so that's why I just included it in this video. But now on to the midis. As I said in my ranking of the full size, like this could change depending on how I'm feeling, but for the most part this is a pretty steady ranking of them based on use, how often I'm reaching for them, how often I'm thinking about reaching for them, etc., etc. Starting off at the bottom, number 9 is the Love palette. I think I'm just not, I like purples and some pinks and stuff, but I think I just don't like them so much together, which is why I just don't ever think about reaching for this. So I think it's basically just my least used, which is why it sort of stays at the bottom of the ranking. Number 8 is the Zendo palette. I think looking at it, it's a color story that I would like, but mostly just because I like the browns and stuff that are in it, like the browns and bronzes. There's the greens and blues, but honestly, I don't really wear a whole lot of green and blue eyeshadow, so that's one of the reasons why I kind of just don't think to pick this up. I do think greens and browns and blues and browns look really great together, but I just don't happen to reach for this very often, which is why it stays at number 8. Next up, number 7 is the Retro palette. I think just looking at the color story, it should be something that I reach for more often because I really love mauves. But for some reason, this palette kind of leans on the side of making me look a bit sick if I wear them, which there's a time and a place for that look, but it kind of has to be something that you're making a choice about, if you know what I mean. So I don't reach for this that often, and if I'm looking for a mauve, I tend to reach for the Lila palette over this one. So sometimes I just kind of forget that I have this, because if I'm reaching for a mauve, I'm probably going to pull the Lila palette. So Retro, number 7. Number 6 is the My Dream palette. This one, I think some of them are not. I might have to put the picture of what it actually looks like. This is the newest one to my collection. It came in my Beautylish Lucky Bag in January, so I purchased it December of 2022, and then it comes in January 2023. This is the only one of the Midis that I didn't actually seek out and purchase on my own. It's just a really super basic neutral palette, and because of that it wasn't really appealing when it first came out. But it's ranked higher than the others because, I mean, sometimes you just want a super basic neutral palette, you know? It's really easy to put looks together using it. And it's one of the ones where, like, I'm not mad about having it, but if I hadn't ever gotten it, I would have been okay with that as well. But right now it's just sort of hanging out in the middle of the ranking, because I have reached for it more often than the other 3, but I don't reach for it more than the ones I'm going to talk about next. Alright, number 5 is the Sunrise palette. This actually might be the very first Natasha Denona palette that I ever had. It was either this one or the Safari. I don't know which came first. But when I purchased this, it was on sale, I think on Beautylish. I just really like the Sunrise tones. Warm tones tend to look good with my eye color, which is why I tend to reach for it more often. I love like yellows and oranges and stuff, so that's why it sits at number 5. Number 4 is the Pastel palette, and it sits at number 4 not because I use it the most or I think it's the best. It's just one of, like, if I'm going to be looking to do color on my eyes, it tends to be like I'm going for a pop of color, so either color just on my inner corner or like on my lower lash line. I prefer to do like muted pastel type colors just because I think it's not as like in your face, you know, especially if I'm gonna be wearing it to work. I don't want to show up with rainbow eyes. I don't think anyone would say anything to me about wearing super colorful eyeshadow at work. I mean, I wear a lot of my Cleona like multi-chromes and like glitter eyeshadows and stuff, but those tend to be, even though they're glitter and have some color, they tend to be on the more muted side and not bright. Big long tangent just to go on. If I'm going to be going for a pop of color, I like using muted pastels. And because it's been spring, summer, I tend to do more color than like in the winter, which is why this one is at number 4 right now. Number 3 is the Metropolis palette. This one for sure is kind of mismatched right now because I used a few shades of the Metropolis to put together my Yucca palette that I made. So this isn't like fully what it looks like, but I really like the Metropolis just because it has a ton of just shades that I tend to reach for. So like bronzes, oranges, yellows. I like doing metallic bronzy reds, which this has a few of, and then also like grungy army green mustard type vibes going on. So that's why this is at number 3. I tend to reach for this more often than not if I'm going to be going for a Natasha Denona shadow. Alright, for number 2 and 1 are kind of tied, so I'm just going to talk about them together. The Glam and the Bronze. On any given day they could switch and outrank each other. Glam, some shades are different right now because I think I used a couple in the Yucca, and then the Bronze is currently my Yucca palette, so this is not what the Bronze looks like at all. But I rank these sort of equivalent because they're kind of the same, like they serve the same purpose in a sense. It's just whether or not I want to go for something warm or something cool. I love doing bronze type looks, and I can do bronze like taupes, metallic-y taupes with the Glam palette, and then warm bronzes, warm metallics with the Bronze. It just depends on whether I want to go cool toned or warm toned, which is why these to me in my head are equivalent. I reach for them about the same amount of times. It just, again, depends on if I want to be cool-toned or warm-toned. Okay, so those are my Natasha Denona Midi size palettes ranked. I hope you enjoyed watching. If there's anything from me that you want to see in particular, let me know. I recently did a makeup like collection tour, and I know I will be doing a more in-depth look at my foundations because I know that was requested. But if there's anything else you want to see, I'll link that video like above wherever it goes, I can't remember, or down in the description. So that's all I've got. I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.